I cheated with my brother's girlfriend because I deserved her. More decades later, my daughter dragged me into a family showdown, and my response proved I haven't changed one bit. I'm a man in my late 50s, and I know people on here love to jump down someone's throat without knowing the whole story, so let me start by saying this. I'm not claiming I was perfect when I was young. I'm not pretending the situation with my brother was my proudest moment, but I'm also not going to let my entire life be reduced to one mistake that everyone else blew out of proportion and weaponized every chance they got. My brother Mark and I were only 2 years apart, and our entire childhood was one long competition. Everything turned into a comparison. School, sports, looks, girlfriends, jobs, you name it. Our parents encouraged it, whether they meant to or not. They always had something to say about who was doing better, and I got sick of feeling like I was always half a step behind him. So when Mark met Lila, I knew immediately he didn't deserve her. She was stunning. She lit up every room she walked into. Everyone liked her, and I could tell, from the very beginning, that she and I had a connection Mark didn't understand. She laughed at my jokes more. She talked to me more. She asked about my plans, my interests. I felt seen around her in a way I never had in my family. Call it ego, call it chemistry, call it whatever you want. But that connection wasn't imagined. Over time, we got closer. We'd talk alone, then more than talk. It evolved. She confided things in me. She complained about Mark's immaturity, about feeling like she was carrying their relationship. I listened. I made her feel understood, and before people jumped to conclusions, no, I didn't force anything on her. Lila wasn't some naive pushover. She knew what she wanted. She said more than once she never should have started dating Mark. Eventually, things crossed the line physically. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I agonized over it. At that time in my life, it felt like the first time I ever won against Mark. And no one will say this out loud, but when you've spent your whole life being second place to your younger sibling, the moment you come out ahead hits differently. Was it wrong? Maybe. But it wasn't the scandal everyone made it out to be. Relationships fall apart all the time. Affairs happen all the time. But because it was Mark, suddenly it was some unforgivable moral crime. What people conveniently forget is that Lila wasn't happy with him. What people ignore is that she pursued me too. Everyone paints her as the girl Mark lost, but never as the woman who actively cheated. Funny how that detail disappears. The whole thing blew up after I got into a stupid argument with Mark about something unrelated. We were yelling, he accused me of always trying to outdo him, and something inside me snapped. I told him the truth, that while he was busy bragging about Lila, she was in my bed. Not my finest moment in terms of delivery, I admit that, but I was sick of being painted like the jealous older brother. I wanted him to know I wasn't inferior. Everything exploded after that. Lila left both of us. Mark cut me off immediately. The family turned on me. My parents acted like I'd committed murder. I spent years rebuilding my reputation while Mark played the victim card so hard it became his identity. Life went on. I married someone else, had kids, built a career. Mark stayed distant, and honestly, I always thought he needed time to grow up before we could talk like adults again. I always assumed eventually he'd get over it. People move on from worse things. Fast forward 30 years. My daughter Sophie got engaged recently. She's in her early 30s, smart, grounded, and probably the most level-headed person in our family. I offered to help pay for the engagement party and the wedding. I wanted it to be something special for her. A week before the party, she sat me down and said she wanted to invite Mark. I said absolutely not. She told me she was tired of the family tension, tired of hearing about something that happened before I was born, tired of planning a wedding while everyone tiptoed around ancient grudges. Fair enough. But then she said she had already invited him and that he accepted. I felt blindsided. She claimed she was trying to heal the family, but she never asked how I felt. She never asked what it was like to be constantly painted as the villain because Mark never let anyone forget what happened. I told her straight up that Mark owed me an apology. He never allowed us to move on. I've tried. I've extended olive branches over the years. He's the one who held a grudge so tight it warped the whole family dynamic. Sophie insisted I try to keep the peace for one night. I reluctantly agreed, though I should have trusted my instincts. The engagement party was beautiful, until it wasn't. Mark walked in, acting like some saintly martyr, greeting everyone with that passive, forgiving smile he uses to make himself look better than everyone else. People flocked to him like he was a hero. I felt that old familiar irritation bubbling in my chest. Decades and nothing changed. Sophie eventually gathered us. Me, her, Mark, and said this was our chance to put everything on the table and move forward as adults. She said she didn't want her wedding to be overshadowed by ancient drama. I told her I agreed, but then Mark opened his mouth. He started with, "I'm willing to forgive if, like he was the morally superior one. Like he was doing me some massive favor by acknowledging me. That was the moment something in me snapped, the same way it did 30 years ago. I said, "I'm not apologizing. I don't regret it. Lila wanted me. You were just in the way." The room went dead silent. Sophie stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Mark looked stunned but not surprised, like he always expected me to crack. My wife covered her face. A couple of Sophie's friends actually gasped. I didn't wait for the backlash. I walked out before anyone could explain why I should feel sorry for something I never thought I was wrong about. Sophie hasn't spoken to me since. She called me a selfish narcissist. She told her mother she doesn't want me at the wedding. My wife is furious, saying I humiliated her and destroyed our daughter's special night. She says I proved everyone right about me. But I'm not convinced I owe an apology for telling the truth. I'm not going to grovel for forgiveness for something that happened decades ago, with a woman who made her own choices, just because my family can't let go of a narrative where I'm the villain. So I'm here asking Reddit, am I wrong for refusing to apologize when I don't believe I did anything that requires it? Because at this point, everyone seems determined to rewrite history except me. Update 1. I wasn't planning on posting again, at least not this soon, but everything that has happened in the last week has been one hit after another. I'm still trying to make sense of how my entire family managed to twist events so drastically against me. People keep acting like what happened 30-something years ago is some kind of unforgivable moral collapse instead of a messy breakup that everyone involved moved on from. Except Mark, of course. But maybe I should start with the message Sophie sent. She didn't call. She didn't even text. She sent a 5-paragraph essay through email. An email. Like she was drafting a professional grievance letter to HR. She laid out, line by line, every reason why she thought I destroyed her engagement party and why she needs distance to reevaluate our relationship. Her words, not mine. Most of her email was dramatic exaggeration and emotional blackmail, but what struck me was how much she sounded like Mark. Same tone, same self-righteous phrasing, same victim of dad's selfishness nonsense. Clearly he's gotten into her head. She wrote things like, "You humiliated us in front of everyone. You weaponized your pride at my expense. You refused to acknowledge a lifetime of hurt you caused." A lifetime? She wasn't even alive when any of this happened. She said that my refusal to apologize at the party proved I wasn't interested in healing anything, only in asserting dominance. That was the word she used. Dominance. Like I'm some kind of controlling tyrant. I've never dominated anyone in my life. I spoke the truth, that's it. I refuse to be painted as something I'm not. Then she ended with, "I need time. Don't contact me." It felt like being lectured by a stranger. My own daughter talking to me like I'm a criminal. And for what? Because I refused to cater to Mark's carefully curated victim narrative? My wife read the email over my shoulder and didn't defend me once. She said Sophie made valid points and that I should consider apologizing sincerely. I told her apologizing for something I didn't do wrong is dishonest. That's when she snapped back, "Then maybe your version of right and wrong is the problem." She slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, she left early to stay with her sister for a few days. She said she couldn't be around me until I reflected on my behavior. I asked her what that even means. Reflect on what? Telling the truth? She didn't answer. And that was just the beginning of the week. With everyone acting like I'd committed a fresh crime, I figured the logical step was to talk to Mark directly. Maybe if he heard from me one-on-one, without Sophie meddling, we could finally settle things. I drove to his place unannounced. He opened the door and looked at me like I was a piece of mail he didn't remember ordering. I told him we needed to talk. He hesitated, then let me in. I took that as a good sign, like he was ready to be reasonable. I started by saying Sophie had blown things out of proportion. I said she ambushed me at the party. I said I didn't appreciate being cornered in public with decades-old accusations. I told him I came because I wanted to clear the air. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He just listened with that infuriatingly calm expression he always used when he thought he was above the situation. Then he asked, "Do you want to know what actually happened, or do you want to keep telling yourself a story where you're the hero?" I almost walked out right there, but he kept going. He said I used to follow him and Lila around socially, that I inserted myself into plans I wasn't invited to, that I'd make comments to undermine him, little things like joking about how she and I had more in common or how I understood her better. Then he told me something I wasn't expecting. He said Lila told him years after everything fell apart that she felt manipulated by me. His exact words, she said you made her feel guilty every time she tried to pull away. Manipulated. I laughed when he said it. I told him Lila pursued me just as much, if not more. He shook his head like he pitied me. Then he added, she regretted everything with you. She said you used her to one-up me. That one hit deeper than I want to admit. I don't even know why. Maybe because it wasn't supposed to be like that. She chose me. She preferred me. She said that. Many times. At least, that's how I remember it. Mark finished with something smug like, you didn't steal her, you pressured her, there's a difference. I told him he was rewriting history to protect his ego. He told me I was doing the same thing. Then I told him he never forgave me because his entire identity hinged on being the wronged brother. He didn't even get angry. He said, I forgave her. I moved on. You never did. That one lingered in the air. I left before he could say anything else. I made the mistake of telling Sophie I talked to Mark. I thought she'd appreciate that I tried. Instead, she called me, furious. She said Mark told her everything, including things I didn't think he would mention. She said it was eye-opening. Then she accused me of lying to her about the conversation. I told her I didn't lie. I told her I gave my version. She said that's the problem, that my version always paints me as the center, the victim, the justified one. She said, you didn't go there to apologize. You went there to prove you weren't wrong. I told her she was reading too much into it. She told me I was impossible to reason with. Then she said the line I haven't stopped hearing replay in my head. You've spent decades convincing yourself you didn't hurt anyone, and it's disgusting. Then she hung up. She blocked my number 2 hours later. My wife came back home last night and didn't even take off her coat before saying, if you don't take accountability, I don't know how we move forward. She said she's tired of defending me to Sophie and tired of watching me ruin every chance at reconciliation by clinging to the most self-serving version of the past. I told her I handled things poorly, but I wasn't going to apologize for something I still don't think was fundamentally wrong. She stared at me like she didn't know who I was. She packed another bag and left again. Everyone is acting like I committed a fresh betrayal last week, like I'm some monster incapable of remorse. I'm not remorseful for the past because the past isn't as black and white as everyone wants it to be. Do I think I handled the engagement party wrong? Maybe. Do I think yelling the truth in front of everyone was the best idea? Probably not. But the truth itself? I haven't changed my stance on that. Mark and I were young. Lila made her own choices. We all did. I'm not going to rewrite history just because it makes other people more comfortable. So here I am, wife gone, daughter furious, family taking sides, and for what? For telling the truth? People keep demanding I apologize, but an apology for something I still don't believe was entirely my fault isn't an apology. It's performance, and it's a dumb one at that. I'm willing to admit I handled things wrong, but I refuse to pretend that I'm solely responsible. Final update. I didn't expect to be back here, but I don't have many people left who want to hear me out, and even fewer who listen without immediately jumping to judgment. And yes, I know most of you already decided I'm the villain. Fine. At least villains get the chance to speak uninterrupted. So here's where things stand. My marriage is over. My daughter replaced me with my brother. Half the family won't take my calls. And somehow, I'm still the only one who sees how ridiculous this all is. But I'll try to lay it out the way everyone else insists on hearing it. Linearly, plainly, accountably. Even though accountability has apparently become code for say exactly what we want you to say. My wife moved out 3 months ago. At first, I thought it was temporary. A cooling off period. Married couples fight all the time, and they separate sometimes to get perspective. But she served me papers not even a month later. She stood in the living room while I read the documents, saying she never imagined our marriage would collapse this way. As if I was the one who packed the bags. As if I was the one who said she couldn't come home until I rewired my entire personality. She told me she couldn't spend another year trying to force empathy into me. That was her phrase. I remember it because it made me laugh. She asked what was funny, and I said, if you married me expecting me to become a different person, that's on you. Apparently that was the wrong thing to say. She said the thing that broke us wasn't the engagement party, or the affair from 30 years ago. It was how I handled everything after, how I doubled down instead of listening, how I weaponized honesty only when it benefited me. I don't agree with her interpretation, but she had clearly made her decision. So now she lives with her sister and I'm in the house alone. I found out about the wedding through Facebook. Not a message, not even a call. A public post. My daughter uploaded engagement photos, a date, a venue, and a caption that said, "I'm grateful for the family standing beside me in this new chapter." And who was in the photos? Mark. My brother. The man who shut me out for decades. Standing next to my daughter, smiling like he had been there every step of her life. There were comments from cousins and aunts congratulating them both. Someone wrote, "So glad she has a real father figure." A real father figure. I stared at that screen for nearly an hour. Not because I was devastated, I've been dealing with disappointment my entire life, but because I couldn't believe how openly people rewrite history when it suits them. I raised Sophie. I paid for her school. I sat through every recital, every scraped knee, every phase and meltdown. Mark didn't even bother acknowledging her existence until she was 30. But he gets the father figure praise because I didn't grovel at a party. Family politics are ridiculous. When the separation started moving through legal channels, the court suggested therapy. Not mandated, but strongly encouraged. My wife made it clear she wanted me to go so the judge would see progress. So fine, I went. I walked into the therapist's office, ready to play along, answer questions, say whatever bland, introspective things people expect in those settings. I figured if I said all the standard lines, "I recognize my communication issues. I'm working on empathy," then maybe my wife would calm down. Maybe Sophie would soften. Maybe Mark would stop poisoning the well. But the therapist wasn't the soft-voiced, overly gentle type I expected. She was direct, too direct. She asked me, "Why did you think you deserved Lila more than your brother?" I said, "I never said deserved." She said, "You implied it. You still imply it. Why?" I told her Lila and I had a connection. She said, "Then why wasn't she with you in the first place?" I said Mark never appreciated her. She said, "That doesn't explain your entitlement." Entitlement? I almost walked out. Not because she was wrong, necessarily, but because she said it without hesitation, as if she'd already diagnosed me in the first 10 minutes. The thing is, that question didn't leave me. Not that day, not the next, not for weeks. But thinking about something isn't the same as agreeing with it. About a month ago, Sophie finally agreed to see me. She said she wanted closure. I could tell she didn't want reconciliation. Not really. There was a distance in the way she stood, in the way she held her purse, like she might bolt if I raised my voice. We met at a cafe I used to take her to when she was little. The irony was almost painful. She didn't waste time. She told me she was tired of defending me, tired of waiting for me to grow, tired of hoping I would take responsibility. She said she realized something after reading back through our old arguments. You don't apologize, you negotiate. She said even when I admit I'm wrong, I immediately follow it with "but" or "you have to understand." She said she doesn't trust apologies that come with disclaimers. Then she said something that actually stunned me. "I don't hate you. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't want to spend my life being hurt by someone who never sees the hurt they cause." I told her families fight. She said this wasn't a fight, it was a pattern. I told her Mark manipulated her. She said I was doing it again. Then came the moment that I guess was supposed to break me. I asked if I could come to the wedding. She said no. Not angrily, not harshly, just no. Like the answer had been decided long before I asked. And somehow that calmness, that certainty, hit harder than any shouting match we ever had. I sit in a quiet house. My wife is gone, my daughter is gone. My siblings barely speak to me. Old friends have cooled off. Even people I haven't talked to in years seem to have picked a side. Everyone says the same thing, directly or indirectly, "You haven't changed." And I keep hearing the therapist's question, "Why did you think you deserved her more?" And I keep hearing Sophie's voice. "You negotiate your apologies. You make everything about you. You don't see the harm. People expect me to break down, to crumble under the weight of realization, to suddenly confess I was wrong for 30 years straight. But here's the truth, the real truth. The part none of them want to hear. I still don't think I was completely wrong. Yes, I mishandled the engagement party. Yes, I let my temper win. Yes, I walked out when I shouldn't have. Yes, I cracked when Mark pushed old buttons. But the core of it, Lila did want me. She said it herself. We chose each other, even if it was messy. Mark never appreciated her the way I did. He treated her like a trophy. I treated her like someone worth pursuing. Everyone can rewrite the story, but I remember how she looked at me, how she talked to me, how she came to me first with her doubts. Maybe she regretted it later. People regret lots of things, but regret doesn't erase the truth of what happened at the time. So yes, maybe things would have gone smoother if I pretended to be ashamed, if I bowed my head, if I groveled, if I rewrote my own memories to match everyone else's expectations. But that's not me. Maybe that's the problem, or maybe it's the only honest thing left about me. Either way, everyone got what they wanted. Sophie has her peace. Mark has his redemption arc. My wife has her moral high ground. The family has its villain. Fuck all of them.